Hi, my name's Melissa,
And my name's April.
and we are librarians here at the St. Paul's Hollywood Library. And today we have some book recommendations for you to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month.
The first book I'm going to talk to you about today is Gods of Jade and Shadow by Sylvia Marina Garcia. Now, this novel is set in the Jazz Age and is about a life-changing adventure when Cassiopeia, who is an 18-year-old woman, resurrects the spirit of the god of death, Hun Kame. Now, Cassiopeia is a dreamer who has longed to get away from the town she grew up in. When she accidentally resurrects Hun Kame, who is the god of death, he enlists her help in recovering his throne from his usurper brother. Thus, the adventure takes them on a cross-country odyssey of Mexico, where she faces many dangers and trials, and she has become associated with the god of death, Hun Kame. Now, this book is heavily inspired by Mexican folklore and legends. So it talks about the gods of death, it talks about the underworld and the black road in the underworld. Now, I really love the folklore aspect of this book, mostly because I love legends and myths, and there are several Mayan influences throughout this book as well. Now, if you love strong female characters, you'll like this book, because the main character, Cassiopeia, is incredibly headstrong. I would file this under like fantasy, romance, and historical fiction. It's very light on the romance, but it's also very satisfying as well. Now, this novel can be considered both YA and adult, but I would place it strictly in adult because there's some very dark themes throughout the novel, especially since it deals like the underworld and that kind of stuff. Now, the author, y'all probably heard about, Sylvia Marina Garcia, has been getting a lot of rave reviews about the book that she released this year called Mexican Gothic. Now, Mexican Gothic, I haven't read yet, but this is one that she released last year, and it's really good. And all the rave reviews for Mexican Gothic have to be true, because I like this book so much, and she's a really great writer. So I highly recommend checking this one out, especially if you like folklore and myths and fantasy. It's a really good read. Now, the next book I'm talking about is a romance novel called Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. Now, this novel is about Carolina, who was left at the altar after a couple of years before the main story begins. So she's now a top-tier wedding consultant in DC and has managed to somehow impress an influential guest who has offered her the chance to interview for a prestigious opportunity that could change her professional life. So the only problem is that she actually has to work with the man who ruined her wedding a couple years back, the best man and the brother of her ex-fiance, Max. Now, Max is a marketing consultant, so he's helping her prepare for this presentation for this interview. So they're going to have to work together and figure out how best to get along, even though she has some very much animosity towards him. So this story is told from the viewpoints of both Carolina and Max. So you can see like his mindset of the whole thing, and Carolina's as well. So, I mean, it's apparent that Carolina loves Max, but isn't all what it seems in this romance novel. They will both come out ahead. They actually work together for this presentation, so they're having to realize that they need to work together so that she can get this job and Max can get ahead in his career as well. It's basically your typical enemies to lovers romance. This novel, why I like it, it includes Carolina. She has Brazilian heritage. And throughout the novel, there's lots of references to Brazilian culture and food. Like, it's very descriptive on the culture and food aspect because Carolina's mother and her aunts run this shop where they can get like all these different foods that are reminiscent of Brazil. And I love the back and forth between Carolina and Max. It's really cute, and I like that it balances out the humor and steaminess of a contemporary romance novel. You'll like this novel if you're into the enemies to lovers romance trope, and if also you like strong, independent female leads. Carolina is very headstrong, she's independent and ambitious, but she also shows her vulnerable side as well. And the author, Mia Sosa, she has Puerto Rican and Brazilian heritage. So the inclusion of the Brazilian cuisine and culture references really bring much needed background to the main character's story as well. So that's why I recommend this book. It's a really good romance read. It's very cute. So highly recommend checking out Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. Now, the last book I will tell you about is actually a graphic novel. This actually is filed under the adult graphic novels in our library system. It is called America, The Life and Times of America Chavez. Now, this graphic novel follows America Chavez, who is otherwise known as Miss America, and a compilation of her adventures. It tells of her origins in the utopian parallel, being raised by her two mothers, leading the Ultimates, and other adventures. She even goes to college in this graphic novel at Sotomayor University with her former teammate Prodigy. Now, she fights one or two interdimensional monsters and confronts a pesky alien cult, so she has her work cut out for her as she is going to school. Now, one of the most interesting scenes in this graphic novel is when America travels back in time to World War II and she meets Peggy Carter and Captain America on the front lines against Hitler. It's a really interesting scene, and I just love this novel because it shows her traveling back in time, crossing dimensions, all that superhero stuff that Marvel's really good at. And she's also Marvel's first Latin American LGBTQ character to star in an ongoing series. Now, I didn't know much about this Marvel character until a coworker introduced this character to me. She is such a multi-dimensional character and is also very headstrong, like the other strong female leads that I mentioned before in the other novels. So I highly recommend this graphic novel, especially if you enjoy that strong superhero, Marvel and DC. It's really good, and it really introduces like a much needed character into the Marvel universe. So check it out.
The first book I want to recommend to you is right here. It's called Esperanza Rising. And it is a children's book. It's written for children starting about the age 9, 10, up through the middle grades, through middle school. But I read it as an adult, and I really enjoyed it, and I recommend it for all ages. Esperanza is a young Mexican girl growing up in Mexico in the 1930s. She is the only daughter of a rich, wealthy plantation owner, has a big ranch there. They grow grapes, and she's really kind of a princess, and she just has the perfect life, a little bit of a fairy tale, and it starts out just a day or two before her 13th birthday. But on her 13th birthday, her father, well, it's the day before, her father is killed, and they also wind up losing their home and the ranch. And so they decide with their servants, the people that used to work for them, to leave for the United States. And they come to California and end up being migrant farm workers and moving all over and dealing with all of the harsh realities of being a migrant farm worker in California during the Great Depression. She's too young, Esperanza, her name means hope. She's too young to work, so she starts out working, taking care of the little children in the farm, in the migrant camps. And but then something happens to her mother, gets very sick, has to be hospitalized. So to get money, she lies about her age and goes and works in the farms. And it's really hard for her, and she, they're coming from Oklahoma, and it's hard to get the work, and there's all sorts of unionizing and going on, and she's dealing with all that. And she, through a series of really hard things that happen to her, ends up losing hope. But it is called Esperanza Rising, if that kind of gives it away, that she ends up being very hopeful at the end. And when she's turning 14, her life has changed so much. But it's a kind of book that it's very lyrically written, and it made me feel very grateful for the things that I have. So I recommend it. Now, I was looking at reviews of it on Goodreads, and a lot of people were saying, well, what about all the racism and all of these issues and if it's more those type of issues that you want, because this is a children's book, so it is sanitized and very clean to be able to appeal to children, be appropriate for them. One for a little bit older crowd I got it checked out on my Libby app. It's from Overdrive, and it's called We Are Not From Here. It's written by Jenny Torres Sanchez, and it's it came out this year, May 2020. It's about 3 teens that are living in Guatemala, and a lot of really bad things happen to them. They decide that they need to leave home and come to the United States as unaccompanied minors. So they cross into Mexico. They travel on a train. It's a series of trains, really. It's called La Bestia. La Bestia means the beast. And they also call it the death train because it's very dangerous getting on and off this train. They suffer all sorts of things. And they left a really hard life in Guatemala. They get to the United States. One of them ends up getting put in a detention at the border by Border Patrol agents. And it's got a lot of difficult things in it. So that is a little bit of warning. But the 3 protagonists, really, their names are Chico, Pequeña, and Pulga. And the first 2, Chico and Pequeña, those mean little and small. And then Pulga means flee. So I just wanted to read to you a little excerpt. It says, "We are small people with small names meant to live small lives. That's all we're allowed to live. That's all the world wants us to live. But sometimes even that it won't give us. Instead, the world wants to crush us." And so they pass through a lot of difficult things, death of a child. It's some violence, rape. It's kind of gritty and harsh things. So just a little warning there. But it's a very good book, and I would recommend it for starting about 15 years and up, and adults. You'll really enjoy it too.
Thank you for joining us today for our Hispanic Heritage Month book talk, and we look forward to seeing you here at St. Paul's Hollywood Branch. Thank you.